Consideration of the report of the Auditor General on County Executive of Makueni for the year ended 30th June 2023.
Chairperson, Public Investments, Chairperson, Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion that this Assembly adopts the report of the County Public Accounts Committee on consideration of the report of the Auditor General on County Executive of Makueni for the year ended 30th June 2023, laid on the table of the Assembly on the 11th March 2025. Honorable Speaker, this is rather a voluminous report, but hopefully members will bear with me. Yes. Honorable Speaker, the County Executive had a qualified opinion in this report. And the first issue raised by the auditor was about variances between financial statement and IFMIS payment details. Honorable Speaker, we had a variance of 773,256,942 with IFMIS statement posting less by that margin from the actual financial statements. And upon interrogation, the management did allude that the difference or the variance was as a result of delayed payments done after June 30th, of course, due to late exchequer release. And they had reconciled the statement as is indicated in the report, whereby general reconciliation was done. We did a reconciliation on compensation of employees. They did a reconciliation on use of goods and services. They did a reconciliation on transfer to other government entities. They did a reconciliation on grants and assets. And the committee did find that indeed it is true that there were late disbursements way after 30th June, which occasioned this variance. And the committee recommends that Marketing Authority. And during this year under review, payments done to NARIG amounted to 21,060,702. MCFDMA worth 17,167,000. Makueni Sand Conservation and Utilization Authority amounted to 3.7 million were captured as an expenditure item in the IFMIS system and budgeted under other infrastructure and civil works, whose ledger is construction and civil works. However, the funds were transferred to NARIG, Makueni County Sand Conservation and Utilization, and MCFDMA, local bank accounts, and reportedly independent by the entities. Upon interrogation, the committee found out that the management did not exercise budgetary control measures as provided for in the PFM Act by irregularly charging these amounts in the separate entities instead of being reported and transferred to county entities. And so the committee recommends that the Treasury should institute disciplinary action to the officer responsible for this failure because this clearly contravened the PFM Act, Regulation 42. Expenditure charged on the wrong account. The statement of receipts and payments reflects acquisition of assets amounting to 1.5 million. Included in the amount is expenditure of 129,249,481 on account of purchase of seats as disclosed in Note 9. The expenditure includes staff allowances paid and fuel expenses worth 4.7 and 1.2 respectively. Honorable Speaker and members, if you can remember, there was a time we had the purchase and distribution of seats whereby each ward had an allocation of 5 million. What the auditor is alluding is that there was a recurrent component in this tender, whereby money for fuel, money for allowances, and so forth should not have been charged on a development vote. So this is exactly what the auditor is questioning. So they did respond that the county assembly appropriated for procurement of farm inputs, provision, certified seeds, for 5 million per ward. The total amount for the 30 wards was 150 million, which was posted under development vote. The budget activities included purchase of the commodity, supply and distribution of the seeds, mobilization and transportation and so forth. And the expenditures in relation to daily subsistence allowance and fuel and lubricants items represent direct costs to the projects as provided for in the IPSAS 17, which is gathered by IPSAS 27 on the biological assets. Elements of cost shall include any cost directly attributable to bringing the asset to the location and condition necessary for it to be capable of operating in a manner intended by the management. It was for this reason that 4.7 million was paid to staff, being allowances for mobilization and identification of beneficiaries, training of beneficiaries, monitoring and supervision, and suppliers were also paid for fuel and transport costs, as appendixed in Appendix 5 with me here. Honorable Speaker, the committee made an observation that the accounting officer did not exercise proper budgetary control measures as provided for in Regulation 42 of the PFM Act by allowing payment of allowances and fuel expenses which are not recurrent in nature to be charged under the development vote. The amount of 6,202,687 on allowances and fuel expenses were part of the 150 million budget for provision of certified seats under the development vote. The committee recommends that in future, the end of treasury should ensure that all expenditures are charged in the correct fault lines to ensure compliance with the law. Also, in future, the head of treasury should ensure that there is clear separation in the budget lines on recurrent and development expenditures. There was an issue on irregular charging of transfers of funds to other operating expenses items, whereby the statement of receipts and payments reflects use of goods and services, an amount of 2.7 million. Included in the amount is an expenditure of 1.7 for operating expenses, as disclosed in Note 4 of the financial statements. The expenditure on the other operating expenses includes transfers of grants and payments to various projects, totaling to 1.4 billion as per the expenditure schedules reviewed. The transfer to other entities amount to irregularly expensed under the other operating expenses. The circumstances, the accuracy, and the completion of the operating expenses amounted to 1.7 billion could not be confirmed. The management responded as follows. In the year under review, some payments in relation to transfers of grants and payments to various projects were captured as expenditure item in the IFMIS system and budgeted under the other operating expenses. However, the funds were transferred to the respective entities, local banks, and reported independently by the entities. You can see the attached documents. Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that some payments in relation to transfer of grants and payments for various projects were captured in an expenditure item in the IFMI system and budgeted under other operating expenses, which is a contravention of PFM section 131 on proper budgetary control measures. This, however, was regularized in the subsequent supplementary budget. So, Honorable Speaker, even though this was regularized, the committee recommends that in future, the county treasury should ensure that all expenditures are posted in the correct fort, with the program identified, whether recurrent or development. Honorable Speaker, on the emphasis of matter, we had an issue with budgetary control and performance, whereby the final receipts show that the actual amounts, the recurrent and development, both, and the final amounts dispensed show an underfunding of 11%. Similarly, there is an under expenditure of 14%. We have an underfunding of 11% and an under expenditure of 14%. Mathematically, we can say, even if the county treasury had received all the amount they had budgeted for, they would still have underperformed by 25%. The underfunding and under expenditure affected implementation of the projects and activities as planned, which negatively affected service delivery to the people of Makueni. In response, the Treasury responded that the budget underfunding was as a result of appropriation in aid for hospitals amounting to 454 million, amounting to 454,968,896 spent at sources and not recognized in the county executive statement of comparative budget and actual amounts. In addition, non-remittance of 110,638,208 in relation to conditional allocation and leasing of medical equipment deducted at source did not form part of the county executive receipts and expenditures. Notably, the county government had a revenue performance of 97%, with the main cause of budget underfunding being the under collection of on-source revenue of 193,404,014 shillings. Further, the under expenditure was due to minimum operations at the beginning of the financial year due to government transition. In order to address the under collection on all-source revenue, the department enumerated a number of measures. One, to leverage on the economy through entrenching cashless mode of payment and sensitization of customers on the use of various payment gateways. Two, embracing technology in enforcement through the use of enforcement app to track and validate receipt transactions. Three, enhanced land-based revenue mobilization through implementation of the county fast valuation role. Enhance revenue supervision for all the streams and instituting staff rotation to address risks associated with familiarity as shown on the staff rotation. Restructuring revenue directorate by creating dedicated divisions to handle various aspects of revenue administration, including policy and accounting, integrating other systems associated with revenue administration. Committee found out that budget underfunding was as a result of under collection of on-source revenue and appropriation in aid for hospital expenses spent at source. However, effective measures have been put in place to attain the targeted revenue. Under expenditure was due to minimal operations at the beginning of the financial year due to government transition. There was no adequate budgetary control as provided for under Regulation 42. And the committee recommends that the county should fully implement the strategies highlighted to attain the desired on-source revenue targets. It should put in place a legislation affecting Section 160 of the Public Finance Management Act, by establishing a revenue board or authority for effective collection of unsourced revenue, and the progress reported within 90 days after adoption of this report. Honorable Speaker, we did check at some counties. We realized like Embu County Revenue Board, a county like Siaya, they have Siaya County Revenue Authority. So we thought that if the county can have a separate body to collect revenue as opposed to the department, this could help. Also ensure compliance with Resolution 42 of the Public Finance Management Act on budgetary control measures. On pending bills, the entity has a pending bill with Kenya Revenue Authority, with CFC Financial Services, and on this as submissions, which was somehow satisfactory, but the committee recommended that the executive should strictly follow guidelines on debt service payments as stipulated from that fort. The response was that the Department of Lands and Urban Planning were the ones who wanted to sensitize the members. So it was their program, and so they were obligated to pay for the members. And indeed, the committee agreed with the department or with the Treasury that indeed that was the way it should have been gone, it should have been done, and the matter was resolved. On irregular award of tender for provision of insurance medical cover, Honorable Speaker, the county government over this year entered into a contract with an insurance company by the name AAR, which had been paid 100,000 and another 98,000, another 99,000 and 999. 98,999,999 for provision of comprehensive medical cover for its staff, whereby a review of documents reviewed that tender document under item number 15 required commitment letters by bidders to provide uninterrupted cover for inpatient and outpatient, chronic HIV/AIDS, congenital, preterm, pre-existing genital, optical, and all that. The contract, however, had a special clause limiting staff members in job group A to J, who make up 3/4 of the total staff, from accessing services in major hospitals in Kenya. And the auditor alluded that this was discriminatory. Upon interrogation, the management admitted that there was oversight by the management, and once they realized this oversight, they called for negotiation, which led to a signing of a deed of variation, which formed part of the contract. Honorable Speaker, I need to say that we all know that this oversight may have been noted when members raised their voices, and even in this House, a member requested a statement on the same. And probably that is why that is when that oversight was realized. We were provided with minutes of negotiation, and upon further interrogation, the committee, in pursuit for further interrogation, the committee did invite several players in this matter, and we did call the acting director, supply chain management. Then we also called the chief officer, office of the governor. Then, and we also called representatives of AAR Kenya to appear before the committee on the 28th of October, 2024. During that day, members of the evaluation committee submitted themselves before the committee, and they did allude that 3 firms expressed interest for the tender, namely AAR, Madison, and Jubilee. That at the time of preliminary evaluation, all the documents were provided. This included the medical scheme proposal with a commitment letter provided in page 558 of the policy, as was needed under requirement number 15 of the tender document. The same scheme had limiting clauses under page 517 with a cover excluding facilities, some facilities to job group A to F and G to H. However, the evaluation team did not scrutinize the entire contents of the medical scheme proposal. They also alluded that the technical score out of the possible 95, Jubilee Health Insurance Company scored 95, AR scored 91, and Manson scored 62. Only Jubilee Health Insurance and AR were qualified in the technical evaluation. The county had budgeted for 215 for the medical insurance. AR Kenya and Jubilee Insurance quoted 198 million 9999 and 473 million 787 867 respectively. AR Kenya was within the budget and therefore was awarded the tender. The scores were done, another submission by the evaluation committee, the scores were done and forwarded to the head of procurement for consideration. That they also alluded that the evaluation committee was not involved in the deed of amendment to the contract. Once they realized that oversight, they were not involved in the deed of amendment. We did interrogate the then acting director, supply chain, Mr. Mutevu, who alluded that he is the one who advised on the open tender. He prepared the tender document and uploaded to the portal. He alluded that the special clause on page 517 as submitted was not considered since it was not part of the tender documents required. Evaluation committee considered the commitment letter under page 558 as required in the tender document. He provided technical advice on the tender as provided for in the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. Then he provided a professional opinion based on the evaluation committee report to the accounting officer, culminating the signing of contract by the relevant chief officer. We did have Zipporah Wambua appear before the committee, who was the then CEO acting office of the governor. She was acting chief officer of the governor up to 14th September 2022. She raised the requisition based on the recommended paper and the approved budget. She liaised with the Human Resource, Health Department, and Legal Department during the process. She submitted that the budget was inclusive of the recruited ECD teachers and whom were not beneficiaries in the previous medical scheme. That's why the scheme was coming a little bit higher. She proposed that due to the dynamics of insurance and county, the county should consider adding the budget. Then we also interviewed Francis Duku, the acting CEO, chief officer. Honorable Speaker and members, it's good to note that we are two chief officers, acting chief officers, serving over this period of the entire procurement process. One up to the time of requisition of the budget, of requisition of the raising of the cabinet paper and requisition, and the other one taking up, who is now Francis Duku. He was a chief officer, office of the governor from 5th December 2022. He submitted as special conditions the tender document were not considered, despite being part of the submissions by the bidder. He submitted that the county attorney, the county secretary, acting director procurement, and predecessor chief officer, acting chief officer under role to advise in the entire process. He submitted that the contract implementation committee reviewed the new clause that had not been considered during the evaluation stage, submitted that there was no extra funds paid for the contract after the variation, after the deed of variation, submitted that a deed of amendment was approved and the disciplinary course amended, and all the school had received quite a colossal amount of money from the county treasury. So we found that there was no value for money. You cannot fund an institution that has no students. And even some of the renovations that had been done were shoddy, they were in very bad state, and some of the procurables that had been procured, they had not reached the school. And so we made a recommendation that the tools and equipment that the accounting officer responsible for environment of ICT, education, and leadership should institute recovery of the undelivered tools, equipment, and training materials within 30 days after adoption of this report. The contractor who did the poor workmanship should be blacklisted and should never be contracted to undertake any work by the county government in future. And the accounting officer in charge of education, ICT, and leadership should take personal responsibility and institute recovery measures within 90 days of any monies that were lost in this tender. Honorable Speaker, I'm almost concluding. Anomalies in e-procurement system. We realized that there were anomalies, and we did make a recommendation that all procurements should be done through the e-system, and use of manual payroll. The auditor had an issue with payment of manual payroll, and which should be done through IPPD system. And the committee recommends that the human resource manager should always ensure that there is compliance on the payment of non-payment of manual payroll, but instead use the IPPD system. Poor management of temporary interest. These are matters that had listed a lot of it, and we had cases whereby we could not ascertain the amount of money that had been paid as interest to sub-counties, to different banks. Honorable Speaker, looking at this matter, it was a little bit complex for the committee, and we recommend that ESCC should take up the matter and investigate this issue of interest. In the subsequent years, the head official should always ensure that there is compliance to the law. Honorable Speaker, that is it. The general findings and recommendations are a summation of the individual finding from each particular query, and also a recommendation on each of the particular query is what we've summed up together into 10 recommendations and 10 observations. With that, Honorable Speaker, allow that I invite my Vice Chair to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to second the motion, the report. And of course, most importantly to note is that where there was no value for money, especially when contractors did some shoddy jobs, the recommendations are very clear. Some of the companies involved were blacklisted, were recommended to be blacklisted and never to work again in this county, including that of the insurance that offers substandard services to our people. And for example, when we talk about ZNTCTI, an institution that consumed over 7 million on renovation had only one student, meaning that there was no value for money, and we recommended repurposing of that institution. And on matters of Emali, where the shoddiness was done in the modern market and the sheds, we made such recommendations. And most to consider is when the officer in charge must take responsibility and the recovery to be done for those who are responsible for any loss of money or public resources. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second.
All right, honorable members, I now propose the question that this assembly adopt the report of the County Public Accounts Committee on the consideration of the report of the Auditor General of the County Executive of Makueni for the year ended 30th of June 2023, laid on the table of the Assembly on 11th of March 2025. The floor is open for debate. Member for Kikumbulu Southport.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to support this motion. I had to put my voice on this because I have diligently worked with the Committee on PSC in the past, and I want to believe they have done a good job, as always has been the case when I was serving in that committee. I want also to congratulate the committee through the leadership of the Honorable Member from Makueni, Honorable Kimongo, for making it very objective and no sensational reporting, and also recommendation in this report. And I want to congratulate them, and I wish them all the best as they continue safeguarding and watchdogging in matters to do with the resources in this county. I want to compliment whatever they are doing with a good big yes when this is called upon. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I wish members to give a big yes. I understand and I like their reporting on blacklisting of contractors. That should be the way to go. Honorable Speaker, this is a precedence which is going to be done by this committee and this assembly as a representative of the people of Makueni and Kenya and beyond, Honorable Speaker, to make it very serious to joke with county resources, public resources, Honorable Speaker. And I want to assure them that as a leadership of this assembly, we will allow them to do whatever possible to make sure that prudence in public resources is ascertained all the time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And if they continue with this same kind of spirit, Honorable Speaker, we will have a very clean report going forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And that reporting on blacklisting of contractors must happen. And as we are supposed to be the chairs of the Committee on Implementation, I want to even challenge the current chairmanship of the committee to make sure that this is observed without any further ado. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Bidini Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support that report, Mr. Speaker, and also appreciate the team. Mr. Speaker, members are aware that the report has taken almost an hour to go through it by the chair. And Mr. Speaker, some of the queries were very key to this House, Mr. Speaker. For example, the expenditure charged in wrong accounts. That was the money we allocated as a house to purchase seeds to the wards, Mr. Speaker. And the money was made for development, Mr. Speaker. And you found that 4.7, Mr. Speaker, was used to pay allowances to staff and the other individuals, Mr. Speaker. So the recommendations were very clear. That money should be used for a specific purpose. If it is meant for development, it should be used for development. If it's meant for allowances, it should be for allowances, Mr. Speaker. We can't reallocate money for people to use it as allowances, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue on insurance, Mr. Speaker, the AR insurance, Mr. Speaker, that year, Mr. Speaker, there were so many outcry from the public, Mr. Speaker, and the staff who suffered a lot when they visited the hospitals, Mr. Speaker. And then, Mr. Speaker, it was so sad for a company that is very well known in this country to have a limiting clause, hidden clause, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the policy was in page 558, but another clause in page 5.
Happened and transpired to those amounts because they could not be traced. We could not find anywhere where there was surrender. And so we thought there could have been some malice and malpractice in the sub-county ward impressed accounts. So, Honorable Speaker, I know it's a report that contains many recommendations, and we would ask the members to support this report. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Kakwaya Ward.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First, I support the report which has been presented to us. Honorable Speaker, I've just highlighted about 3 items which I will go first. And I feel that there is a lot of malpractice, and the people out, especially the executive there, they don't care because 246 million, which was not accounted for, and also not justified or explained because at the end of the day, that means we have lost 246 million through our staff, that is county government of Makueni, and nobody cares where the money was used. There is no, they did not account according to Section 93 of Public Finance Regulation Act 2015, which states that an officer should surrender the cash or the interest within 7 days. That was not, it was not surrendered, it was not accounted for, and we don't care as a county government of Makueni. Also, I've seen that on light grading, and also you have mentioned about fuels, money which was used for fuels and all that. Members of this assembly, the next budget, let us do away with light grading and development. That is a routine and repair maintenance for our roads, which is recurrent in nature, especially the light grading and heavy grading. That is not a project. And just the other day, I received an invitation to go and commission light grading and MTF. Just imagine what a joke by the county government of Makueni through the executive wing of department. Mr. Speaker, I think we could have gotten more time to debate on this matter because it's weighty, and thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Is it a request that I defer to put the question? Mover of the motion.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I take cognizance of...
Order, don't be so much quick.
Okay, thank you. I was saying that I take cognizance of the contribution of members. Allow that I only respond to one issue raised by Honorable Mwema, that we have mentioned the law about once an officer contravenes this law, this is what should be done. We only gave a benefit of doubt by inviting the ESCC to agree with us on this, on our observation. And before that is done, as is the norm, we recommended suspension of those officers as the ESCC does that. I think that is quite in order. So, honorable members, I seek that you support.
Honorable members, I now put the question that this assembly adopt the report of Public Accounts Committee on the consideration of the report of the Auditor General of the County Executive of Makueni for the year ended 30th of June 2023, laid on the table of the Assembly on 11th of March 2025. Will as many as of the opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I have the following obligations to make. First, I've had some chairpersons of committee congratulate the Committee on Public Accounts Committee and the chairperson, instead of saying, I have learned from how this committee has done its work. So I've listened to all those members who have contributed, but they are chairs of other committees, and they are trying to congratulate how the recommendations are and how some participated in that committee. Then why don't you make your recommendations in your committee to be as such? Chamber charge user. So please take a leave from that committee. Besides the chairperson of the Committee on Environment, who felt that you should have done far much better than that. And I agree with him. I agree with the chairperson of the Committee on Environment. Now I give directions that the report of Public Accounts Committee on the report of the Auditor General, County Executive, the year ended 30 June 2023, which was laid on the Assembly on the 11th of March 2023 and approved today, on 12th of March, be conveyed to the County Executive Committee member of Finance, Governor, the Deputy Governor, the County Secretary, and all other relevant County Executive Committee members. Further to that, the Clerk of the Senate, and to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission as recommended. Honorable members, that marks the end of our business today. Honorable members, Honorable members, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 31, paragraph 3, this assembly will be adjourned, and allow me to read for members who still have to be convinced. Standing Order number 31.3 provides that on a day when the County Assembly is scheduled to adjourn to a day other than the next normal sitting day, in accordance with the County Assembly calendar, the leader of the majority or the leader of minority party or other member of the County Assembly Business Committee shall move a motion of an adjournment which shall be debated not more than 3 hours, after which the County Assembly shall adjourn without a question put. Why the question will not be put is because we approved a calendar to start a sitting at a particular time and to end today at 5 p.m. So this is just a procedural and a traditional motion. It's not a substantive motion. So having persuaded you to that, may I then declare that this House stands adjourned until Monday, April 7th, year 2025 at 14:30 hours.